The Aurora Star wasn't a ship so much as a floating economy. A city built of chrome and salt and unspent guilt. The kind of place where people came to forget divorces, debts, diagnoses, and came away remembering everything. Every mirror, every bar, every polished railing reflected a version of you that looked both richer and lonelier than the one you brought aboard. On the fourth night, the jazz lounge smelled of spilled gin, wet wool, and desperation. I sat 2 tables behind the storyteller, nursing a flat Negroni, pretending to read the same paragraph of a paperback for an hour. The band played, blue and green, slow enough to bruise. Around me, people leaned in like sunflowers turning toward a storm. Victor Moreau held court in his wheelchair like a dethroned king. Silver hair swept back with the arrogance of survival, velvet jacket the color of dried blood. His voice didn't just carry, it prowled. You could feel it in your ribs even when you weren't listening. And the Countess, he said, pausing just long enough to let the word shimmer, never gave her Christian name. She slipped the morphine needle from my vein and replaced it with a single pomegranate seed. Said, swallow, darling. Dreams are cheaper than drugs. The circle around him leaned forward as one organism. A honeymooner from Ohio still wearing her reception tan, a retired orthopedist with too much time and too few stories, a woman in a sequined hijab whose eyes didn't blink once. All of them starving for whatever he said next. I was starving too, though I hadn't known it until then. Victor's hands were steady when he lifted his drink, some kind of amber liquor that caught the low light like fire trapped in honey. He spoke without notes, without hurry. Each detail felt curated, deliberate, the scar on her left collarbone shaped like cypress, the way she hummed Edith Piaf off-key while ironing his shirts, how she once talked a Marseille pickpocket into returning her passport by reciting his childhood address in perfect Arabic. No one interrupted. The only sound was the soft clink of melting ice and the faint hum of the engines below us. The Aurora Star was slicing through the Atlantic like a well-dressed ghost. By the time the trio struck up, La Vie en Rose, I was sketching her in the margins of my paperback. Tall, I decided, restless mouth, hands that could open a man like an envelope. When the applause finally came, Victor bowed from the waist in his chair. A steward approached to refill his glass. The crowd dispersed in murmurs, drifting toward roulette tables, lovers' decks, unmade cabins. But I stayed, pretending to be absorbed in my sketch. Watching Victor in the mirrored wall behind the bar. He caught my reflection once. Our eyes met, only briefly, but it was enough to leave a pulse in my chest like feedback. He smiled, small, private, knowing. Then he wheeled away, the soft whir of his chair blending into the hum of the ship's air systems. The woman in the sequined hijab lingered at the bar, dabbing her eyes. He knew her, she whispered to no one in particular. You can't fake that kind of heartbreak. Maybe not. But I'd spent enough years writing copy for people who wanted to sell grief as luxury to recognize performance when I saw it. Still, the story got under my skin. Or maybe it just found a crack that was already there. Back in my cabin, I couldn't sleep. The sea hissed against the hull like someone whispering through teeth. I turned on the reading light and studied the sketch, her profile taking shape from pencil dust and insomnia. I didn't know her name, but that didn't stop me from talking to her in my head. I told her about the divorce. About how silence filled the condo like mold after she left. About the way I kept waking up to phantom text vibrations that never came. I told her I was tired of feeling like a man whose story had already ended. Outside, the ocean stretched to every horizon. Inside, I started to believe Victor Moreau might have met someone who could make you trade your pulse for a myth. And I started to wonder what it would feel like to meet her myself. By sunrise, I'd made a decision I couldn't explain even to myself. That's the only word for it, though at the time I told myself I was just walking. Clearing the divorce from my lungs, I said. Getting air. But every corridor smelled faintly of jasmine, and I followed it like a dog. Deck 7 aft at sunrise, empty. The infinity pool at noon, only children and sunscreen. The glass elevators rose and fell like lungs, each reflection whispering that I was ridiculous. Still, I searched. I began to notice things I hadn't before, the soft mechanical hum behind the walls, the flicker of fluorescent tubes, the way the staff never quite met your eyes. The Aurora Star was a luxury ship on the surface, but beneath it ran a different world. Narrow service corridors, locked compartments, whispered names on the crew manifest that didn't match the badges. Once, I followed a faint tune down to the laundry deck. A woman was humming, La Vie en Rose, under her breath while folding linens. I almost spoke to her before realizing it was coming from a portable speaker, not her mouth. When she caught me staring, she smiled politely, then turned the song off. That night, I went back to the lounge. Victor wasn't there. The piano was unmanned, the tables half empty. A different act was on, a comedian who mistook exhaustion for charm. I found the bartender, a thin man with teeth like spilled sugar. The storyteller, Victor. He's not performing tonight. Private dinner, the bartender said, polishing a glass. He does them for the VIP suites. Special company. What kind of company? The bartender smiled without warmth. People who can afford to ask fewer questions. He slid a drink across the counter I hadn't ordered, a gin and tonic with a slice of cucumber cut in the shape of a crescent. On the house, he said. From a friend. I looked around. No one was watching, but I felt watched all the same. Back in my cabin, the smell of jasmine was stronger. Not perfume, but something older, sharper, like the residue of a memory. On my desk sat a cocktail napkin. My name was written on it in neat cursive, the ink smudged slightly from moisture. Didn't sleep. I reread the note until the words blurred, until I could almost see her handwriting in the air. I tried to tell myself it was a prank, or maybe Victor's way of feeding the illusion, keeping the audience hooked between shows. But I felt the hook tugging. I didn't want to be free of it. The next morning, the sea had turned a deeper green, and the captain's voice on the intercom sounded strained. A storm front ahead, he said. Nothing to worry about. Just precautions. In the cafeteria, I found the woman in the sequined hijab from the lounge. She was eating oatmeal and reading a book upside down, lost in thought. Excuse me, I said. You were there that night. Listening to Victor. She looked up. Her eyes were red-rimmed but steady. Everyone listens to Victor. That's what he's for. What do you mean? She pushed the oatmeal away. He tells stories that make people forget who they are. Some of them never remember again. I laughed softly, trying to disguise the unease. That sounds almost mystical, doesn't it? She said. Then she stood and walked away, leaving her spoon spinning slowly in the bowl. By afternoon, the storm began to breathe against the windows. The horizon blurred. Crew members moved with purpose now, checking straps, locking shutters. The air conditioning carried a faint, metallic scent, like electricity before lightning. I spent hours wandering the ship's lower decks. The art gallery was deserted, the spa lights flickered. I pressed my ear to doors that shouldn't have been unlocked. From one, I thought I heard a woman laughing softly, but when I entered, it was only the echo of waves against the hull. At sunset, I finally saw Victor again. He was on the observation deck, alone, a cashmere blanket over his knees. The sky behind him looked painted in bruises. "Ah," he said when he saw me. "The artist. You found your way back." "I never left," I said. He smiled, the kind that didn't need teeth. "Few do." I stood beside him, watching the sea heave like something alive. "Tell me something, Victor." The Countess, she was real. He turned his head slowly, as if the question weighed more than he expected. "Real enough to ruin me. Real enough to keep me breathing. She left you. She leaves everyone," he said. "That's her nature. She's the moment before you wake up. You try to hold her, and she turns into air." He wheeled closer to the railing. "Why does it matter to you, Mark?" I hadn't told him my name. "I heard your sketching kept you busy," he continued. "Artists have always been her weakness. They draw her into the world, make her visible. That's when she feeds." "Feeds on what?" He smiled again. "Whatever you offer." The wind was picking up. He looked out at the darkening sea, eyes gleaming with a private amusement. "Tomorrow's the 5th night," he said. "If you're lucky, she'll let you find her. If you're not, she'll let you think you did." Then he turned and wheeled away, leaving me alone with the wind and 1,000 unasked questions. That night, I dreamed of her. Not the version I'd drawn, but a new one, eyes like candle flame, voice like tidewater over stone. She said my name and offered her hand, and I took it without hesitation. Her skin was cold as glass, but I didn't care. When I woke, the storm was real this time. Rain hammered the windows. The Aurora Star groaned like something ancient trying to remember its name. And somewhere below deck, a woman was humming La Vie en Rose. By the 5th night, the Aurora Star wasn't a cruise ship anymore. It was a confession drifting through weather. The sea had turned black, the kind of black that eats light. Rain sheeted across the decks. The horizon had vanished. People huddled in the atrium, clutching drinks that sloshed over their rims every time the ship tilted. The band tried to play through the chaos, but the notes sounded like apologies. I watched the storm from the glass balcony above the lounge. The lightning came in long, white knives. Every flash carved the ship into a stuttering photograph, people frozen mid-scream, chandeliers swaying, champagne pouring itself across marble. Somewhere beneath the noise, a melody threaded through. La Vie en Rose, faint but distinct. I followed it. Down 2 decks, past the shuttered boutiques and the pool deck slick with rain. The water was already climbing the drains, swirling with petals from crushed lace and cocktail straws. When I reached the crew stairs, a sign read, "Authorized personnel only." The door was slightly ajar, a cocktail stirrer wedged into the latch. Inside, the air changed. The hum of the public decks gave way to the ship's pulse, diesel, steel, and something older. Pipes dripped. My phone flashlight carved narrow tunnels of light through the dark. I passed stacked boxes labeled medical supplies, biohazard, property of Aurora Star cruises. Each step echoed longer than it should have. The corridor bent left, then right, until a green glow appeared ahead, a single room lit by the flat pulse of a heart rate monitor. The door read medical, authorized only. The lock was cracked open. I pushed it. The smell hit first, antiseptic, sea brine, and something sweet, jasmine again, thick enough to taste. In the center of the room sat a wheelchair, facing away from me. The monitor beeped faintly, though its wires trailed into nothing. Then the wheelchair turned. She was there. The Countess, or whatever she was, sat filing her nails with a switchblade. Silk robe the color of oxidized copper, one shoulder slipping loose. Her hair fell in damp ropes over her collarbone. And yes, the scar was there, cypress-shaped, pale against her skin. She didn't startle. She looked up as if she'd been waiting for me all along. "You're punctual," she said. The accent was a riddle, Paris mixed with Port-au-Prince, a touch of somewhere else entirely. "Victor bet on the 5th night. I gave you 4. I couldn't speak. My mouth was sandpaper." She spun the chair to face me fully. "You've been drawing me," she said. "Page 43 is my favorite. You gave me your ex-wife's eyes. Careless." My throat tightened. "I can explain." "Don't." She wheeled closer. The blade in her hand caught the monitor's glow, slicing green light across her wrist. Victor lost the use of his legs in Tangier, 2017. Drunk driver. Insurance payout, 12 million. But money evaporates when you spend it on myths. She gestured to the walls. Only now did I notice them. Sheets of paper taped everywhere, passenger manifests, photos, names, red circles. My own headshot was above the sink, eyes scratched out with ballpoint. "Every cruise," she said, "Victor finds a new devotee. A lonely heart with liquid assets. You listen, you believe, you follow, and then I decide if you're worth the harvest." The word harvest made something in my stomach twist. She pulled a folded napkin from her robe pocket and smoothed it on her knee. A Mont Blanc pen followed. She wrote a number, my number. My offshore account, the one I'd mentioned to the bartender 2 nights ago after too many drinks. "Transfer it all," she whispered. Her breath smelled like gin and orchids. "Then I'm yours. Victor will sign the divorce papers in Capri. We'll drink Retsina on a boat painted like a zebra." Behind me, the door creaked. I turned. Victor rolled in, rain glistening on his shoulders. The storm howled behind him. "Clock's ticking, Mark," he said, cheerful as a maitre d'. "Satellite uplink goes down in 17 minutes. After that, the bank asks questions." He rolled beside her, his hand resting casually on her shoulder. They looked like a portrait of perfect partnership, grace and decay, money and myth. I stared at the napkin. At the string of digits. At the blade she still held with bored precision. "I don't understand," I said. Victor smiled. "That's the trick, isn't it? You don't have to." Elena, if that was her name, reached for my wrist. Her fingers were cold, the way steel feels just before dawn. "Don't you want to be the man who stole me?" she asked softly. The phone in my hand vibrated. Banking app open. The confirm button waiting, pulsing blue like a heartbeat. I thought of the divorce papers in my drawer, unsigned. The alimony. The condo that still smelled like her perfume. The way Elena's voice made every wrong decision sound poetic. I pressed send. The screen flashed. Transfer successful -$1,812,000 USD. Victor clapped once, slow and delighted. Efficient. I like him. Elena folded the napkin into a paper crane and tucked it into my shirt pocket. Welcome to the story, she said. She stood, not wheeled, not stumbled, but stood. Her legs, bare beneath the robe, were perfect. Smooth. No scars. You could have asked to see my legs, she said. Victor's are real. Mine work fine. That was the tell. I laughed, but it came out wrong. Like a cough pretending to be brave. Victor adjusted his cufflinks. Some men need the myth to jump, he said. Others just need the push. They guided me down the corridor, Victor rolling smoothly beside me, Elena's hand resting lightly on my back. The air smelled of ozone and metal. When we reached the aft deck, the storm greeted us like a mob. Rain slashed sideways. The ship tilted, moaned. Victor produced a life vest, bright orange and absurdly cheerful. Regulations require we offer flotation, he said. Not that it'll help. Water's 38 degrees. Hypothermia in 12 minutes. Sharks in 20. Elena leaned close, whispering something I couldn't quite hear. I only caught the last word. Jump. I stepped to the rail. The sea below boiled white. The cold reached up before I even touched it. She raised the switchblade in a lazy salute. Page 44, she said. Draw the ending yourself. Then I climbed over the rail. As I fell, I heard Victor's voice rising behind me, smooth and unbroken, already rehearsing for the next performance. And there I was, strapped to a hospital bed in Marrakesh. The ocean opened like a mouth. The cold was a truth too big for language. And then, nothing. When it hit me, the shock didn't feel real. It was like being erased. One moment I was a man, the next I was a pulse of heat disappearing into black water. The Aurora Star loomed above, her lights bending in the waves like a dying constellation. I kicked upward, but the vest tangled around my shoulders. Rain and seawater blurred into one. My lungs screamed. Somewhere in the chaos, I thought I heard her humming, soft, steady, off-key. La vie en rose. I don't remember deciding to survive. Maybe it was reflex, or pride. Maybe part of me still wanted to prove I could finish the story. When I broke the surface, the ship was already moving away, a white wall swallowed by darkness. I shouted once. Pointless. The storm took the sound and threw it back as thunder. I floated for what could have been minutes or hours. Lightning cracked open the sky in brief photographs, debris, foam, the suggestion of a lifeboat far off. I thought I saw a silhouette watching me from the railing, a woman, unmoving. Then another flash, and she was gone. The cold started to eat its way in. Hands, feet, then thought. I remembered her words, dreams are cheaper than drugs, and for a moment, I wondered if this was the dream she'd promised. When the lights appeared, I almost didn't believe them. A fishing trawler, small, rusted, the kind that should have been retired decades ago. The crew pulled me aboard with shouts I barely heard. Someone wrapped me in a blanket that smelled of diesel and sardines. Someone else poured whiskey down my throat until the world tilted back into focus. Lucky bastard, the captain said. Another hour and we'd be dragging nets, not men. I tried to speak, but my voice came out as a rasp. The ship, I managed. Aurora Star. He squinted at the horizon. We didn't see any ship. Storm like that, everything disappears. They took me to a coastal hospital in Lisbon. Hypothermia, dehydration, mild concussion. The doctors said I was lucky. I didn't feel lucky. I felt like I'd been peeled open and left to dry. When the police came, I told them pieces of the truth. There'd been a robbery, maybe a scam. I'd fallen overboard during the storm. They took notes, nodded politely. No report matched my story. The Aurora Star had completed its voyage safely 2 days later. No missing passengers. No one named Victor Moreau or Elena on record. Maybe you got the name wrong, the officer said. These cruise ships, thousands of people, lots of confusion. I didn't argue. After discharge, I checked into a cheap pension near the harbor. My reflection in the mirror looked 20 years older, skin sallow, eyes hollowed out. On my desk lay the only thing the nurses said I'd been found with, a paper crane, folded from a cocktail napkin. The ink had bled from seawater, but I could still read the faint handwriting on the wings. Page 44. That night, I opened my sketchbook. The pages were warped, half the drawings ruined, but her face, my imagined version of her, still stared back from the margins. I tried to add the next page, the ending, but my hand shook too much to finish the lines. Every time I tried to give her an expression, she looked back at me like she already knew. I took to walking the harbor at night. Freighters came and went, their lights drifting across the water like promises. Sometimes I'd catch a scent, salt and jasmine, and my heart would start to race. A few times I swore I heard laughter behind me, soft, familiar, always gone when I turned. A week later, I saw the news. Luxury cruise ship Aurora Star to undergo renovations following electrical malfunction during storm. There was a photo, passengers smiling on deck, the same lounge where I'd sat pretending to read. And there, in the corner, partly obscured by a waiter's tray, was Victor Moreau. Velvet jacket, same smirk. Alive, of course. I zoomed in until the pixels broke. Next to him, a woman in a copper silk robe, turned away from the camera, a glass raised. You couldn't see her face, but I didn't need to. Under the photo was a quote from the cruise director. We pride ourselves on unforgettable experiences. I closed the laptop and laughed until my ribs hurt. The sound didn't feel like mine. After that, I started noticing stories online, posts on travel forums, whispers in finance circles. Men and women vanishing after luxury cruises. Accounts drained, assets transferred, lives abandoned. Always the same pattern, a storyteller, a mysterious companion, a storm. The police called them coincidences. I called them rehearsals. Eventually, I went home. Or what was left of it. The condo smelled stale, the way sealed rooms do when no one's breathed in them for months. My ex-wife had remarried. My bank account was a tomb. I sold the place, paid off what I could, and kept the sketchbook. I couldn't sleep without the sea anymore. I'd leave the TV on, volume low, tuned to channels that played old ocean documentaries. The hiss of the tide became my lullaby. One night, a postcard arrived. No return address. Just a single line written in that same elegant cursive. Dreams are cheaper than drugs. No signature. No explanation. Just a faint scent of jasmine. I burned the card, but the smell stayed. It seeped into the curtains, into my clothes, into the corners of my mind. Weeks passed. Sometimes, when the insomnia stretched into dawn, I'd imagine another ship somewhere out there, gliding through fog and starlight. In its lounge, a new circle of listeners leaned close as Victor told his story again. And the Countess, she never gave her Christian name. And maybe, 2 tables back, someone else pretended to read while sketching her face, thinking he was the first to see her clearly. Thinking he could save her. The myth always needs new blood. That's what keeps it alive. As for me, I moved inland eventually. Bought a small house near the mountains, where the air is thin and the nights are quiet. But sometimes, when the wind hits the windows just right, it sounds like the sea. And beneath that, faintly, like someone humming La Vie en Rose. I still draw her sometimes. The Countess, Elena, the woman from my dreams. I try to change her, different hair, different eyes, but she always becomes herself again before I finish. The paper cranes have started appearing too. One on the doorstep, one in the mailbox, one on the dashboard of my car. Always folded from cocktail napkins. Always damp, as if pulled from the sea. I keep them in a box under the bed. I don't open it anymore. Not because I'm afraid, because I know what will happen if I do. Someday, someone will knock on my door. Maybe it'll be her. Maybe Victor. Maybe neither. Maybe both. And when that happens, I'll tell them I'm ready. Because the truth is, I never stopped falling. The water just got deeper. Thanks for watching.